took off the list because we just didn't think we'd be able to get to it. So we kind of encourage you either on things that we just didn't have time for tonight or on things that you want to get into more that we might have to move on to get to other things tonight that you kind of follow up at your own city council meeting. So first up is the Lincoln County Animal Shelter update, and I think Wayne's going to take that.
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, mayor. Good evening, councilors and other guests. It looks like there's a whole group of people here. This is, I don't know, the 5th or 6th meeting of mine today, all on different platforms. So I'm hoping that everybody can hear me okay. I know we did the sound check, so that's great. And I do have several things that I'm going to try and update you on that you can see from the agenda here. And I'm going to actually tie in the first two because they do have a nexus and connection, and that's the animal shelter update and the county commons update. But before I start, this is actually a great opportunity to, I'm going to get down a little bit later and talk about some of the recovery process from the fire. But we really haven't had a chance to talk to the city council. I know I had a little bit of a chance to do this because I had dealt with some other business with the city council recently, but I just wanted to express my thanks to the city of Toledo, to the mayor and to the council and to Judy Richter for assisting and all the efforts that dealt with the response and now the recovery from the fire. Obviously, the fire departments across the county were intimately involved in the response. I know the chief's here and can maybe talk a little bit about their experience, but it was pretty rewarding, I know, to me to see the way the communities that weren't directly impacted stood up to assist other people who were impacted. I got to telling a little bit of a joke here that said that we don't just look to the Red Cross, you know, to assist us, but we also look to the Rod Cross in terms of assistance. I felt like the city, the mayor, city manager, councilors, you kind of gave the keys to the city to the community at large out here in your response. Just an amazing response in terms of offering services, offering sites for people who needed immediate housing, offering donations, incredible numbers of donations as part of your response to what was going on there. So I just wanted to take that at the front end and give you my thanks for what you did publicly. So with that, I'm going to start off, and I don't know if you want to do this, Chair Jacobson. Do you want me to try and go through my list of updates and then take questions, or we can take questions on each one of these? What's your preference?
I would say maybe let's go through the list and then do questions, and then we'll go through the next list. That's okay. Okay,
so let me talk about the animal shelter first. There is some information. The animal shelter has been front and center in the response to the fire. Actually, I think there was an article in today's paper that talked about some of the impacts and the recovery for animal populations and what the Lincoln County Animal Shelter did to assist people who were impacted by the fire and their livestock and pets too. But we, of course, in responding to the various crises, what seems one right after the other that we've been dealing with in the course of the last, well, actually 7 months or so, certain other projects have taken a little bit of a back seat and haven't moved forward as quickly as we wanted to, but we have been doing work on the animal shelter project. And I'm going to talk about that in the context of 3 different facets of that program. One is the planning that we're doing for eventually rebuilding the Lincoln County Animal Shelter. The second is the property that we've been looking at and where we're exploring options in terms of possible relocation of the animal shelter. And then the final, very important one is the financing for the project. And so towards the first end, and I see Assistant Counsel Jerry Herbage is on the call now too with us. We have actually been developing a request for proposals to get on the necessary planning, engineering, consulting services to design and develop the project itself. We have to do that really in 2 phases with the direction we're going here. The first will be a conceptual plan and design, and this is where we're going to make sure that we get input from staff, from stakeholders, from groups that have been providing services to animals, from the public, to help us with what is the kind of facility that we want to put together here. What are we going to do with the funds that we have available to actually develop the next iteration of an Lincoln County animal shelter? And what kinds of services are we going to provide with that? That has to be in enough detail. It's going to include footprints, description of amenities that we can use in a property acquisition phase. And it will serve as the preliminary design that will allow us to develop once the final location is secured to do a final design. The final design would be detailed drawings, the bid documents, and construction. And Jerry's been working on the boilerplate language of that, and we actually anticipate we're going to have that done here in the very near future. The second element of our update is on the property. As I think you're all probably aware, we've been looking at a site with the city of Newport, located out near the city of Newport airport. And that process really has, it's moving forward, but it has several components that we're going to do to examine this particular option. One is that I'm working with City Manager Spencer Nebel on a memorandum of understanding. And that is something that we'll present to the City Council in Newport, the Board of Commissioners, and to the Airport Committee, which is also involved in this, to talk about the property that we would like to utilize out there and the manner in which we utilize it. This would be, it is municipally owned property, and what we would do is enter into a long-term lease for the property. And that's part of the steps of what we do with this memorandum of understanding. That will then lead to our ability to develop an actual lease rate for the property. And at that point, we can finalize the boundaries that we'd be looking at for that particular site. And then the way that this is zoned in that particular area, it's going to require the application of a conditional use permit. So we've been discussing what that entails, what's necessary to make that application. At this point, the Airport Commission has really thrown open their arms. They welcome us wholeheartedly to that site. They think it's very compatible with their long-term plans, and they're just eager for us to see if we can't move forward. The property originally had a concern with the availability of water, but that was, once we got down to looking at the specifics of that, the city actually indicates that there is not a problem with that anymore, and there is adequate water service on that particular property. And so, assuming that this is a site that's mutually acceptable to all the parties, then we can enter into a formal agreement and we can commence construction. So the final phase of the update is the financing. And that really includes two component parts to do the financing. The first is securing the property. And again, we would accomplish that through a long-term lease. And that's actually a cost because there's some additional utilization of that property the county will be looking at, the county itself will be paying for, and not part of the overall funding that's provided for the capital costs or the operational costs, which come from the Animal Services District. So the capital costs, we have budgeted $2.5 million this fiscal year, which includes the professional services for this particular project. And the board, working on this project and a number of other projects, authorized staff to actually go forward and do a private placement financing for this, to see if we couldn't get all the money we needed to do this project, as well as several other projects that we are contemplating. And as we reported to the board not too long ago, we actually did that private placement and were very surprised. I guess surprised would be the word.
Good surprise.
Good surprise at both the number of financial institutions who actually submitted proposals to us, and then the incredible rates that we got in completing this financing. And it was, I don't have the figure right in front of me, and maybe one of the commissioners recalls the exact number. It was around 1.52% total net capital costs. And that was just incredible. In the many years that I've done financing on projects for the county, I've never seen a rate like that. We went into this process anticipating we would get a rate somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 3, thinking it was a pretty good time to go out for financing. So that's really going to be a great cost saving to the county and the taxpayers over the course of the funding of this particular project. So that's where we're going with the animal shelter, and I'm going to segue now into the Commons update. So once that plan is finalized, and assuming everything happens and we go forward with that site, and that is the process that we undertake, we look at relocating the animal shelter, then we move into the phased redevelopment of the Commons area. And based on where we're at again with financial, the financing that we have available to us right now, actually the first thing we move forward to and putting on the site for the redevelopment is the combined transit emergency services center that we've planned for this particular location. And that again is a combined facility that will be the new location for our emergency services department and all of its ancillary operations. I think we've learned a lot over the course of the last 7 months about what the need is for a facility like this. I think that's going to be a pretty exciting process to plan that out, just because we now have so much experience about what kinds of emergencies we have to do and what a space like the Commons, how vital that is to our overall emergency planning. And so again, there is funding that's provided in this year's budget for construction of that particular facility. We'll undertake, we can actually use the boilerplate request for proposals we're developing for professional services for the shelter, alter it appropriately, and then go forward and get the consultants on board to help us design that particular facility. And I think our hope is, again, that we can actually do the relocation of the animal shelter, begin the construction of that this coming summer. And then also do the emergency services transit center and get those going forward. Part of this is dependent on the city of Newport and their urban renewal activities. Things got kind of put to the wayside, and things changed a little bit because of COVID and some of the actions that the city of Newport took related to actually available urban renewal funding. But one of the key factors in terms of any redevelopment of that part of the city of Newport is improvements to Harney Street. And we're talking about that portion really around the intersection of Highway 20 and Harney, and then heading northern from there, connecting onto the existing improved areas of Harney Street. So we're also working with them in terms of the timing of when those improvements can be made and how that'll fit in with our plans to start the redevelopment of the Commons. And so those are the immediate activities that take place at the Commons. We continue to accumulate additional funding through the dedicated voter approved sources for the full redevelopment of the Commons area. And that will be something that we'll be looking at a schedule for that in the future after these first initial projects get completed. So that's the update on the first two items. Buildable lands inventory. As you may recall, the housing strategy plan that the county and the cities in the county adopted and developed through a grant from the Department of Land Conservation and Development included one of the key recommendations was to try to develop a buildable lands inventory. And we've been doing a great deal of initial work. We've actually utilized the services of Rachel Maddock Hughes, who I know is a consultant also for the city of Toledo on several of your projects. And she and I have been actually had a series of meetings with the Department of Land Conservation and Development and with the Lane County Council of Governments, Lane COG. Lane COG has a very, very robust geographic information system. And actually, from what we've examined and looked at, a very enviable buildable lands inventory process already in place for the jurisdictions in Lane COG. And so we've been looking at a proposal for them to do something similar for us and what that might cost and what that might entail. Interestingly enough, the typical buildable lands inventory, and one of the things we really don't want to do is to create a static document. Most jurisdictions, cities especially, develop these buildable lands inventories so they can justify expansion of urban growth boundaries. And that's really the purpose. So they become a point in time project a data set that exists at one point in time and then really is not a very usable tool for anything beyond that. Yeah, what we have been discussing with them is a concept of having actually an interactive, updatable buildable lands inventory, which they have not done completely. They were very excited to talk about that as really the next step and the next iteration of what a buildable lands inventory should look like. You know, and that would be, again, something when we're talking about buildable lands inventory, that would be something that would show constraints in areas of development, land use features such as parcels, ownership, zoning, overlaid with employment data, building footprints, photos, that kinds of stuff. It would show boundaries of the various jurisdictions. And again, we're looking at this as a county-wide project out here. And then for us, we think it's pretty important that we show infrastructure. We're able to show where there's sewer, where there's water, storms, roads, that kind of information. And so we would do something a little bit more robust than the normal buildable lands inventory to build out the data set. And then with our own GIS resources internally, both at the cities, at the various cities we have in the county and the county itself, we'd want to update that information on some kind of more regular basis. And so it'd be, and we're trying to figure out what's a good way we can do that we can use our existing professional services to do that without spending a whole bunch of money to maintain the system overall. So right now we're waiting for a specific proposal from Lane Cog to do that. They did something not quite as detailed as this, but they did it down in Coos County, in Coos Bay. So they're very eager to actually make a proposal to us that we would then bring back to all the communities in the county to see, is this something we want to do and can we come up with the resources? We got the Department of Land Conservation and Development involved because we think they would be a natural funder. We don't think we can do all of this alone, even with the cities and the counties banding together. I think we need some additional resources. So we've been exploring ways to actually pay for this too. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a lot more information in the not too distant future. So the next item on my list is the solid waste and hazardous toxic waste disposal that's actually part of the recovery efforts from the fire. I think that given the amount of devastation and destruction that occurred, not just in Lincoln County and in the Otis area, but really throughout the state, this is an issue that really became front and center for the response from not just, again, Lincoln County, but many other counties across the state. And we were looking for some guidance from Oregon Emergency Management and from the state of Oregon, as well as FEMA, on how do we tackle this thing in a uniform and possibly economically feasible way, rather than each jurisdiction trying to deal with this particular issue on its own. The end result was that the state appointed and has underway a debris management and debris cleanup task force that is staffed by DEQ and ODOT, as well as many other folks from other agencies, to look at if we can get a proposal and also get some funding to deal with cleanup issues. I had the opportunity, and I know other county staff people did this weekend, to meet with the city managers from cities of Santa Rosa and Malibu in California, who were both part of the devastating fires that have actually wreaked havoc in many parts of California, the wildfires. And it was really interesting to talk to them about how they dealt with response, and especially around the debris cleanup, and what a monumental task that is. And how they really to a T recommended that we band together to do this. We get together and figure out how to do this for the benefit of our community and our citizens, because individuals trying to take this on by themselves, they may have insurance to do some of the work here, but it's really a daunting task. So we continue to work with the task force. We're looking at the strong possibility of a local state agreement that would have us, the state of Oregon, picking up a share of the costs that aren't covered by FEMA, but a significant portion of the cost covered by FEMA in the cleanup here. So there'll be a lot more details coming out in the coming weeks, and actually coming out a lot sooner than that, as we're gearing up a whole number of agreements that need to be put in place, procedures that need to be established, contractors and monitors that need to be hired, and decisions made by local decision makers, including the Board of Commissioners. Here, is this the direction we want to go in, and where we're going to go? Initially, the board has indicated yes, and in fact, to my knowledge, all the impacted counties in the state have all given the governor the thumbs up to say we want to explore this proposal. We're ready to go and do our part. And our part will be a lot of community engagement, a lot of community information, a lot of boots on the ground to assist in some of the logistics of doing the cleanup, and really doing a variety of those things. There's a lot of details still to be worked out, but I think this is a direction that we're going to go as a state. And I think it's actually proven, at least from the experience of others who've had these devastating fires, as the right way to go for both the community, the environment, and overall for rebuilding and recovery. All right, promoting local business. I'm not really sure what that entails. I can tell you this, maybe I can talk about it just in the context of both some ongoing programs and what we're doing with COVID. So one of the things that the Board of Commissioners has authorized and we've been doing is supporting local chambers of commerce. So we initially were providing money in the last several, we have actually have a 3-year agreement to provide support for smaller local chambers of commerce, including the one in Toledo, the one in Waldport, and the one in Depot Bay. And that provides basically some operational costs or operational funds for them to promote and support local businesses. When COVID hit, we also found chambers were tremendous partners, and we knew that the business community was being impacted severely by all the restrictions in place for COVID. So we actually expanded the scope of what we're doing, and we provided funding now, so not in addition to Toledo, Waldport, and Depot Bay, now to chambers in Lincoln City, Newport, and Yachats to all participate in assisting businesses get through the impacts of the COVID shutdown. So those are some of the things that we're doing with business promotion. We also have different programs that we do through the Council of Governments. We have a microloan program. We do some other economic development activities there. But it may be something that you have some questions or some ideas around what you'd like to see done beyond that. And I guess the last one on mine is finance, accounting, and budget details. I guess that was placed under me because I'm fairly familiar with the county budget. And it was maybe just more to say, what questions do you have? And let's see if I can answer. And if I can't, I'll get you the answers. So how's that? I stayed within a half an hour.
Good job, Wayne. So does someone, I guess we open it up to overall questions on all those topics. Does someone want to kind of fill us in on what specific questions or things you had around finance and accounting?
Sure, I can do that. My question was about, and my question is about the budget went from a very detailed budget last year to this year's budget being very minimal in what and where things came, where money comes in from and where money goes out to. And I'd like to know why that happened and if you're going to go back to the more detailed budget for next year. I'm a member of SWAC, and we had a pretty detailed budget going in, and then when Paul started, he no longer had a detailed budget. So we'd like to, I'd like to know what's going on there, please.
Well, I could try to provide at least the information I have on that. We have a new finance director in Lincoln County who has a great deal of municipal law experience in the state of Oregon. This was a recommendation that she made for purposes of preparing the budget document and meeting the basic legal requirements of the state of Oregon. It provides a little bit more flexibility, but it stays within the strictures of the law in terms of budgeting by fund budgeting, and then also budgeting in accordance with personal services, materials and services, capital, and other kinds of expenses there. So this was we actually did develop, and there are available detailed budgets in the manner in which you talked about. We all have to still put together those detailed budgets. It's just that for purposes of appropriation, she's combined those things into a different document. So if you got any questions about particulars, we can get you answers to that. But this was her recommendation for the manner in which she would like to see us go forward for budgeting in the future.
Okay, so if a citizen wants to see those, then they have to fill out the form and request them. Are they charged for that then, or are they gonna get
No,
that?
that's information we can provide. That's information we can provide.
Okay,
Yes.
that's important to me, and we are very detail oriented in Toledo, and Judy does an excellent job with her staff for us to get all the information we want. So yeah, we need to be able to. We like to be able to see that from the county too.
Sure. And if Counselor, if you have any questions on any particular aspects of the budget, Christina Scheer is our finance director, and she'd be happy to answer those, as well as the commissioners or myself. So please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, that sounds good.
So
Great.
Wayne, I had one question on the budget. I'm curious as to how much the COVID situation has affected your budget for this coming year. I know that it has pretty much devastated at least 2 to 3 of our county municipalities' budgets. I'm curious as to how it's affecting the county.
It does impact the county. And it's something that we've built into the budget this year in terms of both ongoing costs and what we do in the future. We're actually a little bit more diversified in our revenue streams than either the city, and especially the city of Newport and the city of Lincoln City are significantly impacted. Well, actually, Yachats.
Yeah, that was the other one I was thinking.
You're right. Those 3 communities are, and I've talked to,
Right.
city managers, and we've talked quite a bit about the impacts, and we actually shared information in terms of what we were seeing. So we built into our budget, the budget was built with an expectation that at least in terms of room taxes, which is the major component of that impacts us. So there's other things impacted too, just from business being less than it had been, and unemployment and other issues. But the room taxes, we've built in a projected decrease in the amount of money we're going to receive and where that's allocated, and actually accommodated that already. But it's not as significant. It is significant. I'm not going to say it's not insignificant, because it is significant, but it is anticipated.
Yeah, and this is Katie. I would just add that we've had to create some internal mechanisms to basically keep budget down. So we are letting positions, well, first of all, every position is being more scrutinized than I think it had been in the past. So every single position, even if it's a positions we've had for many, many years, has to be refilled because of retirement or whatever, those are heavily scrutinized. And if it's decided they do need to be refilled, then it is a 6-month wait from when the person leaves that position, from when a new person can start, to try to capture the cost savings there, although not all the positions we're deciding to fill. So, as one of our biggest costs, to most cities as well, is labor and personnel. That's one of the mechanisms we've put into place there.
And also, go ahead. Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I understand the pain that you have with that. My first go around in city government had to do that twice, and it was a difficult decisions to make. So I just wanted to find out how, for lack of a better word, how well your crystal ball was working. Because the more I talk around the state, people are finding it to be a lot worse than they thought it was. And so I was kind of wondering where you thought the bubble had landed.
Well, I can say this. I think that at this point, the reports we're getting from our finance directors, we're pretty close to our projections. Although, we just finished up, especially the room tax, we just finished up what it would normally be the quarter when you'd get the most taxes, obviously the summer season into the fall. And we don't yet have, those taxes aren't yet collected, so we don't know specifically where we look, with those particular revenues. But so far, at least, from when we, the last quarter, we had the impacts from the last quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year, and we're pretty close to our projections, which were significantly lower.
So are you open for the other topics that Wayne
Yeah.
covered yet?
I was just gonna say that. So go ahead.
All right. First of all, I want to tip my hat to you, Wayne, and to the commissioners. I think handing off the solid waste and hazardous toxic waste disposal issue to the state is not just wise, but I think it's very prudent. One of the things that I would really stress to both you, I talked with Dick Anderson up in Lincoln City, and we need to impress upon the state that this is workforce housing and these people need to get into some sort of at least reasonable temporary shelter as soon as possible. But along with that, the need to keep scammers and to keep the those that would prey on people that are in this time of desperation, we've got to put some sort of, barriers, put protections in place, something, so that these people who have already lost everything don't lose anything else trying to claw back into a semblance of normalcy for their lives.
Well said,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
tell you this, that we are doing that. We're very concerned. That was one of the lessons learned from the California experience. There were a lot of, folks coming in. I don't know if I want to call them fly by night, but maybe it is. Coming in
That's
to take
what it is.
advantage. It is, and take advantage of people who are, desperate. They're obviously are devastated by the losses they have, and they're looking for the cheapest and easiest way to resolve their issues and get back to their property. And that's not always turns out to be the cheapest and easiest. Right. So,
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's also a lot of scams that go along with this, with people saying they're FEMA, trying to
Yeah.
provide assistance
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So,
Well, I just want to add that I have a deep appreciation for the work that you did. And that I want you to know that I think Paul Site and the haulers did an excellent job of getting information out to us, and that we could forward on to people and share on social media, so that they knew right away that what they were dealing with was considered toxic waste, and they didn't go plowing through it and get themselves into harm's way that way. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing too, and I think you need to know that they did a great job.
thanks for that, Betty. And Paul's new, so I
Yeah,
feel like he came in and just got slammed with a big mess here, but we're happy to have him. Yeah. All right. Any other? Oh, go ahead.
One of the other things I wanted to mention on this particular topic on the hazardous waste. So I hate to say this, but we all know government doesn't move fast. So with a lot of these homes, especially in the Otis area, abut right up against prime restored salmon habitat. Are we going to have some sort of a plan in place to either cover it up, sandbag it, do something so that when the rains do start coming hot and heavy again, that the things that we're trying to get rid of, the hazardous waste and such, don't end up into that riparian zones?
mhm. Would you like me to take that?
Yeah, well, I knew Wayne and I were gonna arm wrestle for this one. So,
You want to go for?
Katie?
I'll go, and you can back me up, Wayne.
Okay.
But yeah, I have those same concerns, and especially the RV park there is just, it's Salmon River RV Park. It's right there, and this is salmon season, so we have fish and endangered runs in that river now, and so we're very worried about that. As far as what the state's plan is in terms of covering or that kind of stuff. I have not had certainty on that. We do know probably within the next 2 weeks, they're going to be out to do the household hazardous waste collection first. So that's the gas cans and propane tanks and ammunition and other things that would be, dangerous and hazardous if you come in with heavy equipment and you start turning over, creates risk for other fires or just other risk in general. So that will come out first. And then the larger debris and ash management comes in. I do know that EPA of their own accord, so thank you, EPA, and this is the research arm of EPA, not the enforcement arm of EPA, but they got a rapid response team out there and are already doing groundwater testing throughout the area. So that is really helpful to kind of know, where we started right after the fires and to be able to monitor that. So
materials that leaches into there. So we have raised the issue, raised the alarm. We've been looking for solutions around the erosion control, both immediate and then the longer term, slide risk out there. And it's something I can tell you that our state partners are very cognizant of. I wish I could say I had solutions to those situations right now. We're surely putting out a lot of information related to it so that these property owners can do, if there's things that they can do immediately, that they're aware of what they can do and how we can help them. But yes, that is another component of the whole response that we're going to have to develop.
Thanks, Wayne.
other questions for Wayne on any of the stuff that he talked about?
Well, I have another question about for along that same line of not erosion and stuff like that, but the housing up there. Is there going to be some support for things that FEMA won't cover? Are they, like permitting and things like that for those people? That's, they were hit really hard. They lost everything. And is there going to be some support from the county as far as reducing or eliminating permitting or whatever else they could do?
We're exploring a variety of avenues and options related to that, but in part, it sort of depends on the situation. Remember, a lot of these folks will qualify for what's called individual assistance, IA assistance from FEMA. And actually, that FEMA does cover things like permits. So it's one of those things that you don't want to necessarily say, waive the permits, because all we're doing is taking up additional aid that could come to our community. So we got to be careful with doing some of those things. But there are certain parts of that we're going to explore. And I know I won't mention them now because we haven't yet talked to our partners. We have some partners in some of these things, but that's definitely a concern. We've been talking a lot to other jurisdictions, seeing how they're doing it. I can tell you this: while we're not going to, do away with especially environmental regulations, we are going to look at other kinds of things that we can do on either a temporary basis or maybe even more permanent to streamline some of our processes to look at some of the zoning requirements that are out there, to do some things that assist people, in an emergency situation. So that's all on the table and all things we're examining.
Yeah, and I would also just add that we have had offers for kind of planning department help from other neighboring counties. Like Tillamook County has said that, while this is maybe down the road a little bit, they will give us building inspectors and that kind of stuff so that we don't have a holdup at a particular point in time, that then blocks people from moving forward and getting into new homes or whatever. As Wayne mentioned, there's other municipalities obviously impacted by fire, even more so than we are. Marion County is working on some things there that we're looking at adopting as well. So, the bad part is the state was hit really hard by this. The good part is that there's many other counties dealing with it and a lot of kind of creative brains and other commissioners coming up with stuff. And if we find a good idea somewhere else that's working, we'll certainly steal it.
Great. Thank you. It's good to hear.
And don't forget, commissioners, you're on the loaning end too. You're loaning a lot of good ideas to other jurisdictions.
I don't feel like I have any good ideas left for this year, but we'll see. All right. Anything else for Wayne at this point?
Nope.
All right. Christy, can you scroll up so I can see? I think those are the only two things on my list, but yeah. Okay. So two things on my list here are OSU extension programs and the winter warming shelter. With OSU extension, I think the note I had received was that people maybe weren't as familiar with OSU extension as being kind of a county-based program, and you just wanted to learn more about that. So I had sent to your city recorder kind of the brochure and impact statement from the Lincoln County Extension Office, which I asked them to send out to all of you, along with the contact information for Wiley Thompson, who is the regional director for OSU Extension, covering Lincoln, Tillamook, Coos, Curry, Clatsop, in Columbia counties. And I think Mayor Cross actually has had some connections with Mr. Thompson. So yeah, good. So if you have some time on one of your agendas or whatever, another time, it might be good to have him come and talk. But I worked for OSU Extension and the Oregon Sea Grant program, which is part of Extension, for 20 years. That's where I came from before joining the county. And I was the county leader there for about 8 of those 20 years. So it's a program kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm on both the state Extension Advisory Committee as well as the Lincoln County Extension Advisory Committee as well. So the extension program is, I would say, a quasi county program. So they do receive money through an extension tax service district. The money comes to us and then we ship it back out to them. That is part of how they make their program work. The other contributor is OSU itself, that mostly contributes through paying for faculty members and specialists that provide the programming. And then the local support really is for a lot of supplies, travel, certain positions like clerical staff, office managers, and sometimes cost matching for certain kinds of positions. All the employees at OSU Extension are actually OSU employees, not county employees. So the current programs that OSU Extension is offering is Master Gardeners, and I think the comment I received was, that's the one we do know about. We don't know about any of the other ones. The Master Gardeners does have staff support, but it's mostly a volunteer based program focused on helping people, learn how to do home horticulture. The other one that people typically know about but don't associate with Extension is 4-H. So 4-H is an OSU Extension based program. So all of your 4-H clubs and activities and the fair part of, or the 4-H part of fair is Extension. Actually, all of the fair is Extension because they have a contract to do that for us as well. But that's unique to our county. We also have a small farms program. So working with small farms and agricultural operations within Lincoln County. A lot of workshop-based stuff. We actually contracted with them right before COVID to work on doing some research and focus groups and surveys for us with our agriculture community in Lincoln County, asking them what they need help with or advocacy for to better adapt to changing climate. Forestry program, there's actually a extension forester that covers 3 counties. They're based in Clatsop County, but they cover Clatsop, Tillamook, and Lincoln. And then SNAP Ed program, you're probably familiar with SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Education Program, but there's also a SNAP Ed program, which is Supplemental Nutrition Education Program Education. So there are several faculty members working in Lincoln County that do that program. It's basically working with low-income families and seniors on how to make food dollars stretch, how to eat nutritious foods, that sort of thing, how to actually cook. They're a real partnership-based program, all of Extension is, but they work a lot with schools and other nonprofits to basically be teaching people how to cook and how to cook cheaply and healthy. And then the last program, which is where I came from, was the Oregon Sea Grant program. And so we have Angie Dewar, who replaced me when I left. And that position is primarily focused on marine fisheries. So working directly with the commercial fishing community and other ocean users on resolving conflict and doing seafood education and those types of programs. So that's kind of extension in a nutshell. And like I said, I had sent your city recorder more information about them and contact information for Wiley if you wanted to reach out to him. I will just kind of jump into warming shelters, and then you guys can ask me questions about either. So winter warming shelter, let me get to those notes here. So because of COVID, FEMA allowed municipalities to apply for what they call FEMA non-congregate housing dollars. In a typical emergency, you can congregate people together, like in a school gym or what have you. Well, because of COVID, that's not a good model. We certainly had to do some of that during wildfires, but that's not something we want to be doing while we're in a pandemic. So we applied for those dollars early on in the pandemic and have received approval to use those. At this point, those FEMA non-congregate housing dollars goes through December 31st, 2020. There is talk at the federal level of that being extended, but we don't know if that will actually happen or not. So since about March, the county began hoteling people, basically to get them off the streets, to not put them in congregate shelters, and frankly, to get them away from each other so that we weren't spreading illness. Originally, we just used general fund dollars to do that until we were able to apply for this FEMA non-congregate housing. So we have had people in hotel rooms the entire time of the pandemic. Some of those people are directly COVID affected, COVID positive, or COVID presumed positive, or people that maybe have someone in their home that's positive and they need to get away from them. However, we have had other people using those hotel rooms that are not COVID positive or presumed positive, but that maybe are coming from facilities that had a high positivity rate and simply just need to be somewhere else to quarantine, or just would otherwise be homeless, or have medical conditions that make them very vulnerable. So our attempt for this year for the warming shelter, and actually we have a conversation with Betty and others from Grace Winds later on this week. Our attempt is to use that FEMA non-congregate housing opportunity and do a hotel-based winter sheltering program this year. So there's a lot of details to sort of work out there. We originally were going to meet a few weeks ago to kind of work on those details, and we had to delay twice because of fires, but we'll be coming together later this week to really work this out. It will definitely be a needed partnership between the county and Grace Winds to really pull that off, because while we do have some staff that's working with the hotel and getting the rooms and paying for them and being a point of contact, we can't do all of that by ourselves. So we're going to need some, like I said, some strong partnership on really pulling this off. So that's kind of where we're at on the winter warming shelter. Like I said, we know those dollars go through December 31st, 2020. Oh, and I forgot to mention that we think we'd be able to extend that program on some foundation dollars past December 31st, 2020, to kind of keep that going through the time the winter shelter normally goes. So we're hoping to kind of use that FEMA money with the foundation money to get us through the time period that shelter normally runs. So I'm happy to take questions about either of those two things.
Well, Katie, on the extension service, that was my comment about the master gardener being the only thing we know about out here. And I'll be honest, I think it's mostly because of branding. I've known about the Sea Grant program my whole life, but I never knew that was an extension program. I've always seen it as OSU Sea Grant, not OSU Extension Sea Grant. Same with 4-H. I didn't realize it was run by the OSU Extension Service. So, you know, it helps to have those dots connected, and I thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the problem is that each department or college pays for that individual program, like 4-H or Sea Grant or what have you. So they all want their own logo on it. So it can get confusing for people to know what is extension. And in the past, when I worked for them, whenever I did a program, I felt like, you know, half of the page was all the logos, right? And I only had half a page to actually give the information. So, yeah. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, well
I
then,
just want to say that I was surprised about small farms, the small farm program. I'd never heard that it was here in Lincoln County. I knew there was a forestry program, and I knew about some of the rest of them, but I didn't know about small farms, and I think that's great. I have a lot of friends that are small farmers, so so I'm hoping they're taking advantage of that program, because I know Extension does a great job with all of their programs.
yeah, and that faculty member, Pammy Monette is her name, and she is a split. So she does both master gardeners and small farms and a little bit of forestry. So she's kind of a catch-all, but she is doing small farm programming. So yeah. All right. We're coming down to the wire. I don't think we're going to make our 6:30 deadline here, but hopefully we'll be close. So I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl Fisher, our Behavioral Health Deputy Director, and Rebecca McBee Wilson, the Lincoln Community Health Center Director. And we just know that you wanted to talk about public health. So I don't know, Cheryl and Rebecca, is there something you want to kick off with, or do you just want to find out what exactly they wanted to know first?
It would be helpful to know what people would like to know.
Okay, so maybe we'll just jump off with the discussion. Does someone want to kind of jump in with what it is they were curious about?
Well, one of the questions that I had in the realm of mental health is, how much money would it take for us to get to, or I should say, get back to the era of when, if we were dealing, say, with a domestic situation or an unstable person situation, that we would be able to call, our police officers would be able to call and have a mental health person, advisor, however you want to term it, on scene with them. In speaking with my police chief and with others, that is something that is desperately needed when it comes to those type of situations where the skill set of a police officer is not exactly meshed with the needs of the mental health patient, as it were.
Hi, this is Cheryl Fisher. Thank you for having us here tonight. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. We have two avenues for this. Starting in March, and coincidentally, it was the exact week that the governor declared the stay-at-home order for COVID. We started a new program in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, and it's called COMET. And the COMET team is a team that consists of one licensed mental health counselor and one sheriff's deputy. They have made arrangements with all the different cities and municipalities across the county so that they can travel wherever they are needed. And that is their goal, is to be able to assist wherever there might be a mental health emergency and there is some sort of police presence as well. It is it's our first run at this. I'm fairly new here. I keep saying that, but I'm coming up on a year and a half at this point. But this is our first jump since I've been here into trying to find a way to assist our community and assist our sheriff's department and all of our cities, towns, and municipalities with some mental health services. If this goes well and we're able to properly fund it, I know the sheriff, has mentioned he's interested in expanding the program. The second piece that we have for many years prior to my arrival, there was not a fully functioning crisis team. There was a team, it had some areas of opportunity, but we've been able to firm that up quite a bit. So we have a fully functioning crisis team. There's one person every shift. So, and it sounds like, one person, but that's really similar to Benton County or Lynn County. We're in the same ballpark there financially. And they also are able to be activated into the community. As a matter of fact, just over the past week, we've seen them activated in the community more than we have ever before. And, we're assuming that's related to the fire response. So the way that would be accessed is through the crisis line, which has been widely published. I can also, get other details out to you if they're needed. The way to access the COMET team with the sheriff is to simply call the dispatch or call the sheriff's office or 911 for the sheriff's office, and they can dispatch those folks to wherever they're needed. We've had quite a bit of positive response from different communities that it's, really saved not only potentially an arrest, but also saved people from going to hospitals and other things too. So we really think we're on the right track here, but we are just in the beginning stages of that.
Cheryl, I greatly appreciate the response. And I want you to know that this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I have talked with our chief and with our city manager, and if it means I got to go to Salem every week during the legislative session next year, I will. But we need more money in mental health. We need more money in intervention. We need more money in all those services. And so, like I've asked our chief, if, can I meet with you at some time and sit down and figure out, if you had a wish list of what it would take to get us into a position where we can actually, I hate to say this, be more proactive than just running and putting out fires. I would be all for it. And hopefully, I'm turning to the experts because I don't have the answers for this. I just know it's something that our people need desperately. So
I appreciate that support so much. I can tell you we're in much better shape than we were a year ago. I know it may not always feel that way. I agree with you 100%. It's never enough. It's never enough. And when you were asking the commissioners about the budget, I almost chimed in because we are facing the same issues. We are not funded through the county funds, the county general funds, but much of our funding does come through, the legislature, through the Oregon Health Authority, and they are projecting significant cuts. We don't know yet, of course. We haven't had those sessions yet, but it is worrisome. It is worrisome for all of us. And any, whether you go in person or you send letters or you just let them know that, especially for our small communities, any type of a cut is gonna hurt our people. And, the bigger cities and counties can absorb more. It's still going to hurt everybody, though. But
Right.
our little places, what seems like a small cut to them is extremely damaging to a small county like ours. So I appreciate any help that you could give as far as support at the state level.
I might make a suggestion, Cheryl. Maybe if you and Mayor Cross could follow up together via email, later on, and if you could maybe give him some, numbers and how many people we're trying to serve, and those kinds of situations. Maybe I know we have some really nice stories from the COMET team and stuff. Of course, keeping people's identity protected, but I think that stuff I think is always the best cannon fodder for advocacy. And I also agree with Cheryl that we absolutely could use all the help and advocacy on that as we can. And I think it's really powerful for not just the agency that holds those positions to say, give us more money, but I think it's powerful for our partners and our cities and others to say that as well. So maybe you can kind of help Mayor Cross, get a good package together to be effective in that.
I agree. I think that's a great idea, and I'm happy to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you,
I wanna-
Katie.
Yeah, I want to put it out there for Rebecca too. If there's some things that we can do to advocate for you guys to get more money too on your side, by all means, let us know. We will do what we can. We know how important it is and how hard it is to maintain our funding and get the things we need in a county, a rural county. So we are here to help you guys too if you need it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And
Any
please
other-
feel free,
Oh, go ahead.
feel free to reach out to me at any time, even if it's just a quick call, hey, we have this idea, or, we came across this. I want to be, very accessible and available to everybody. It's been pretty hectic the last, especially last few weeks, but we're starting to come up for air a little bit, and never hesitate to reach out if you have questions, concerns, or just ideas. We definitely welcome that.
So I'm going to go ahead and put Cheryl's email address in the chat box,
That would be great.
and then everyone has it.
Perfect. I'm SS, which is unusual.
Yeah, I just had to look you up in my email. All right. ssfisher@co.lincoln.or, oops.us. There we go. It's in the chat. So everyone kind of has it there. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, anything else from anybody before we adjourn?
I just want to say that, this is not my first time at having one of these meetings. This is the first time I've had one of these via Zoom. But I really appreciate these meetings that we can have with the county commissioners. I know that it looked like a really long list. Well, Christy sent us a long list to choose from, so you opened up our options. And, when you give us all these options, we're going to take every one of them we can get. So I'm sorry that a lot of our counselors weren't here for this. I think it was a very productive discussion. I think that, in the future, picking up the phone and giving each other a call, I think is a good thing. So, at least for me, I can't speak for my whole council, but, pick up the phone, send me if you have my phone number, text me, call me, send me an email, whatever. Because as it was said earlier, we got to work in this together. And I think the one thing that has come out of COVID is that we're doing more things together and fewer things in our own little backyards. So for me, I appreciate the chance to see all of you. And Doug, I want to say that it was a pleasure seeing you on the meeting today at noon. You sounded very robust today, so it was a good day.
I do have one question. I have one question or one comment. I don't know how we're going to address this, or if we even can. I've heard from quite a few people, and I know from my own experience during the fires, communication as far as our radio stations was very poor. There was nothing. I mean, we have radio stations that say they are emergency broadcast radio stations, and they were still programming with their regular syndicated shows. They weren't cutting in with any kind of details on things that we needed to know. We weren't getting the information. And I know it was very frustrating for the people up in Lincoln City in particular, but we all need to know too, if the winds had shifted, we could have all been in a lot more serious danger than we were. and we would have needed to know right then that we needed to get out. So I think we need to figure out a way that we can do a better job at covering those things. It's critical. That's a critical issue.
I would agree with you. And there's been some other people that have brought this up as well, and we had damage to some of those lines. We had damage to our own radio towers. It was making it difficult for the sheriff's office,
Right.
even to communicate with each other. So I know there is a councilman from Lincoln City that's kind of putting together a package, for lack of a better word, of how you could create some resiliency and duplication potentially, so that so I've kind of asked him to take the lead on that and bring it back to us. And also when things, knock on wood, it's 2020, when things settle down, hopefully a little bit, we will have our after action debrief that we do as part of our emergency management planning. And I think communications is going to be a really big part of that discussion. I will say we did do something right, because with 0 fatalities, obviously the door-to-door, type situation worked, but that doesn't mean there's not some serious room for improvement there.
Right, but there, it helps with the rumors and everything else too. We just need to be able to keep everybody informed. I know at one time, and I don't know if they're still active or not, we had a ham radio group in the area, because I knew some people that were actual ham radio operators. I don't know if we could find out where they're at and how they could even get into the system. But, sometimes they're the only ones left, and that would be a critical thing, especially, if we had an earthquake and a tsunami, who knows where we would be with our communications at this point. Our cell phone towers may not be standing, so we need to think of every contingency that we can and figure out how we can make this happen. So,
Agreed.
let's informed, and if we can help, by all means, ask.
Thanks,
And
Betty.
that's the one thing that has to come out of this, is that we learn, that we come out of this with, instead of having to reinvent the wheel every time we have a disaster or a crisis or whatever word you want to attach to it, that at least the basics, we know what we're doing. We may have to fine tune it to fit the certain crisis, but the basics, the communication, the logistics, how we get from point A to point B is taken care of. And it's just break the seal and go.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said, that will be a large part of kind of our after action debrief. I say debrief, but I think it's going to be more debriefings probably. So, all right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Really nice to see your faces and connect with everybody. And feel free to stay connected. I put Cheryl's email address, my own, and Doug's all in the chat. And it looks like Mayor Cross has done the same. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye.
Thank
Nice
you.
to
Good
meet
night.
you all that I haven't met before.
This conference is no longer